Hello. This shiur is being said out of order because one shiur was accidentally erased, and so we're doing it again. We were talking about the prohibition of lo Techanem, of not allowing non-Jews to live in Eretz Israel. And we discussed the psukim where it comes from, the Gemara and the basic Rishonim. And now, to bring it into our times, the Meshid, the Var, the Netziv, the Rosh Yeshiva, the last Rosh Yeshiva, the Voloshin Yeshiva, writes, varaiti legאון echad. I have seen one excellency, one expert in Jewish law, שכתב וליתר says, he has written, יכולים למכור לישמעאל המכירו, that you can sell land to a Muslim that you know. אלא שאסור למכור שדות לעקום בארץ ישראל. But even we know that it's prohibited to sell a field in Eretz Israel to a non-Jew. בחמץ קודם הפסח. So how do you sell chametz before Pesach? שנהגו שהמדידה אחר Pesach. We customly measure exactly what it is and so on after Pesach. ואם כן האחריות חלה על המוכר. So the responsibility for this is on the seller. וצריך למכור גם החדר דשכירות לא קניא. והרי שאסור למכור בייס בארץ ישראל. And in order to make this sale go through, you also have to rent to him the room, or sell him the room where the chametz is. And it's prohibited to sell a room in Eretz Israel to a non-Jew. And it seems that we must rely on what the Taz wrote in Yeridea, סימן קכ"ד, סif katan dalet, the Yishma'alim dinam ki ger toshav, that a Yishma'alite is like a ger toshav. V'tzarich lomar, the lo Techanem lo kai rak al man de palich levodah zara. And you have to say that when it says an idolater worship, it's actually talking to someone that does idolatrous service, not necessarily a non-Jew. Not all non-Jews would be included in this. The Achinami in מכירה, and so too concerning the land, the nafgalan milo Techanem, that we've gone away from the prohibition of lo Techanem, lo kai aleihim, because it does not apply, it does not stand on the Muslims. Vim ken efshar limkor liishmael hamikira. Therefore, you can sell to a Muslim that you know, a Yishma'alite that you know, v'tahave shvis shalakum, and then the land will be of a non-Jews on Shmita. And he continues, in truth, the Gaon has run away from a wolf and run into it and been hit by a lion. Meaning, he made the situation much, much worse than it was to begin with. Because he was trying to prevent any possibility of transgressing the Isser of Shmita, which, according to the vast majority of poskim in our time, is only a rabbinic Isser. And what he did is he ran into the prohibition of selling land in Eretz Israel to a non-Jew, which everyone agrees at all times is a Torah prohibition. And what he brought, a proof from the selling of chametz, that the Taz says, dinam ki ger toshav, that the Ishmaelites in our time around us have the halacha of a ger toshav. V'rayat Rabbi Yehuda shesadar korban vidre, and in the raya from Rabbi Yehuda in the Gemara, nishtamute al hamare. It's impossible to leave. Because the Taz, in fact, never said that the Yishmaelite is like a ger toshav. Ta ger toshav boy lekabel alav shav mitzvos b'nei gimel chaverim. Because a ger toshav has to accept upon himself to keep the 7 mitzvos b'nei Noach before a beis din. Vein mekablim ger toshav elo b'sman she'yovel naheg. And we do not accept the ger toshav. Our beis din is not allowed to sit to accept the ger toshav, except at the time that the beis din is sitting. So you cannot say that these people are gerei toshav and that therefore they are allowed to be in Eretz Yisrael. That is the position of this Netziv. The Yeshuas Malko, Rabbi Yeshua Mikutna, writes as follows on the same issue. Achar Drishat Shlomo Tov, Hine Ha'isi B'Shavua Havar B'Kilos Kodesh Varsha. In the last week, I was in the community of Warsaw. Ki hutzrachti la'id sham b'hapelta. I had to testify to the police there. V'yan ki kasavli harav v'gon av based in Bialystok. The Rav, the Gaon, the Av based in the Bialystok, that's Rav Shmuel Halaver. These, both the Yeshuas Malko and Rav Mahalaver were on the initial based and that set up the first Heter Mechira. Besik Shmita, concerning the matters of Shmita. Heichlis naheg sham. What should they do in Eretz Yisrael concerning the problems of Shmita that they have? Ki im yachdalu milavod tesham ha'adama. If they don't continue to work the land on Shmita year, it will become desolate. V'lo yuchal lehiskayem be'Eretz Yisrael, and they won't be able to live in Eretz Yisrael. Ksavti lo, I wrote to him. Shiavod levarsha ve'rei ledaberimo. In Warsaw, we will actually be able to sit together and speak, because apparently both of them had to be at Warsaw at the same time. Vine amarti b'shitus shetov lahatir limkor lenachri. I said it's obvious that it's good to sell to a non-Jew, afal pishasir litem v'limkor karka be'Eretz Yisrael, even though in general you're not allowed to give or sell or rent land in Eretz Yisrael to a non-Jew. Kevan shu latovasi yishuv. The reason why in general you're not allowed to do it is because as the non-Jews move in, they'll push Jews out. Here, the reason why we're selling it is so that the Jews are able to live in Eretz Yisrael and to continue living in Eretz Yisrael. So it's the opposite of what it normally would be. Peshita de ein kan iser de lo techanem. So it is obvious to me that there is no prohibition of lo techanem. Beprat k'shemokar almanas lahachzir. And all the more so when you sell the land on the condition that it has to be returned to us. It seems that this Yeshuas Malko is what the Netziv was referring to when he said, your arguments that you're giving are not convincing to me that you've managed to avoid by this the prohibition of lo techanem. Now, so what the first argument that he gives, and these are repeated in the Tshuvas Mishpat Kohen of Rav Kook, there, and of course in Shabbos Haaretz of Rav Kook, the Sefer on Shmita, and the Har Tzvi in his Tshuvas of Tzvi Pesach Frank. So the first thing that, which is the first thing that they mentioned, which is the last thing that Yeshuas Malko here mentioned, is that when you're selling for a set period of time, meaning it's not a permanent sale, the non-Jews aren't going to be holding this land forever, and therefore you're not really giving them to dwell in the land. You're giving them to be there only very, very temporarily. The second thing, which is not in the Yeshuas Malko here, but it was mentioned by the Netziv, is that the only prohibition, Rav Kook and Rav Frank say, is when you're selling the land to someone who actually worships idols. If they don't actually worship an idol, then there's no prohibition of selling the land. Now, they are aware that the Rambam said that originally the source of Islam has some sources in the Avodah Zarah, but they've gotten rid of it. It no longer exists there, even though it may have been there at one point in time. People talk about the Kaaba as something they worshipped, whatever. The poskim seem to all agree that today, at least, Muslims are in no way idol worshippers, and therefore that would be an argument. There's another thing. We're not allowed to let a Jew live in Eretz Yisrael. What if you're selling land to a Jew that already lives there? I mean, we're not selling land to someone that's a non-Jew that's moving into Eretz Yisrael. We're selling land to a non-Jew that's already living in Eretz Yisrael. We're not allowing him to live there. We're allowing him to live there perhaps a little bit more easily or something. I don't know, but he's going to make some money off this project. But in any case, this in and of itself isn't going to be a problem. These are the three primary arguments saying that there is no prohibition of lo techanem, and it is not one of the primary issues that's brought up today, or let's say for the last 70, 80 years, as a great problem in terms of the heter mechira. Now, the Chazon Ish has had two issues that he was mechadesh as a problem with the Isur Mechira. The first was ein shliach l'davar avera. There is no agency concerning sin. As it's understood in the Gemara, the simple way, the statement of the Gemara is, I tell you to destroy Shimon's property. And then Shimon sues you because you destroyed his property. You can't say, listen, Rabbi Ru told me to do this, so, I did it. Then Rabbi Ru, am not responsible for the fact that Reuven destroyed Shimon's property because I do not have the authority to tell him to do that. So therefore, it doesn't fall back upon me. If I tell someone to murder someone, it's not my murder, it's his murder. Now, does that extend to Dinei Mamanos? Does it mean that I cannot make him an agent to do something? He does it, my property could still be sold or not sold. And originally the Chazon Ish agreed to this, and then he rejected it, and he said, no, the agency doesn't exist. The reason why, if I tell Reuven to destroy Shimon's property, that Shimon can't come back to me, because the agency doesn't function when there is an avera involved. Rav Kook and Ritzu Frank, in the same truist that we mentioned above, said that in terms of Dinei Mamanos, that the sale, if I sell my property in a prohibited way, for instance, everyone would agree, there's a halacha of bar mitzvah, that my neighbor has the right of first refusal before I sell my property. Meaning, if he's going to give me the same amount of money, he has the right to buy it before anyone else. That's clear. But what if I make Reuven an agent to tell someone to sell my field to someone that isn't my matzron, that isn't my neighbor? The sale still goes through. It's still a legitimate thing, and it doesn't seem that we uproot the sale because I was supposed to sell to my neighbor. So too here, they say that simply because I have sold this to someone I'm not supposed to sell it to, it doesn't uproot the sale, the fact that I've had an agent do it. In any case, the way we do this today is slightly differently, in that we have the official from the Jewish agency that is in charge of renting the land out, meaning almost all farmland in Eretz Yisrael is in fact owned by the Jewish agency and rented on 99-year leases that some of them have expired and be renewed for more 99-year leases. But in any case, the authority, the ultimate authority of them is in the Sachnut. And so the person in the Sachnut that has control of this land is in fact the one that sells it. So it's not the individual farmer himself anymore that sells it the way the Rabbanut does the Mechira today, but we use the owner, the ultimate owner, let us say, not the lessee of the field, to uproot the Isur Shmita. So in fact, the Shaila of Ein Shaliach L'Davar Avera no longer in fact applies, because we're not using a shliach. The person himself is the person who's responsible for it himself is in fact the one that's doing it. Now, the Chazon Ish had another issue, and that is that to be a legal land sale in Israel, you have to register the land sale with the land authority. There has to be rishum b'tabo. If it's not registered, then in fact the land isn't sold. It doesn't mean anything. So the Chazon Ish originally didn't think this was a problem, and then he says, Hadrana, I have retracted into what I said, and what I've said in the past about this. And V'nirin Tvarim in Truma Meiser Shvis, it appears to me that everything concerning Truma Meiser and Shvis, Kol Shelo Nichta B'tabo, as long as it is not recorded in the land registry, Hari he shall Yisrael Kedinehem. It retains its Jewish ownership just as the public land law is. Now, this is a very, very interesting issue. When we do a sale, for instance, sell chametz and Pesach, does it have to be in accordance with the laws of the place we're living in or not? When a person owns a business that's open for Shabbos, when I first did Noah's Bagels, there was originally one store before it became a chain, about 200 yards from my mother's house in Berkeley, was the first store. We did a contract for Shabbos where he sold just over 1/7 of the business, over 16% of the business, to a non-Jew, and that person owns the business on Shabbos, and he runs the business on Shabbos, so the Jew has no interest in what happens on Shabbos. So in this way, does that sale also have to fulfill the laws of the state of California, or is it sufficient if it's a valid sale in Jewish law? We'll look a little bit more on that in what is formally the next year, although it's already been put out there. Everyone should have a wonderful day.